Live, and we are back. Get your cup, your mug, your glass, your tank, your chalice, flavors, fine, canteen, jug, or flask, or vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes literally everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip in philosophy, and it happens now. Go. We are ready to rock. Elena and I were just discussing before we went live what is going on, and the answer is we are not prepared. There's too much to talk about with Occam and with William of Occam. So what we're going to do instead is free for all. What do you want to talk about, Elena? We've got lots of cool books we could read. We've got lots of other subjects that we're studying that we could get back into. We still have Ovid's Metamorphoses, which we were doing a class on back in the day. And so you're in charge. What do you think we should do? I can come up with a list here. Do you want to read the next essay in philosophy of religion that follows the one we finally finished with Alvin Plantinga, where the next essay is actually going to be a criticism of that one that we spent 4 videos on?
Oh, please, no, 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 no.
Okay, all right.
I couldn't. I was so patient with Plantiga,
No.
so patient with him. Honestly,
Oh, I did a
we
bad
could
job
do.
then. I did a bad job then because he's really interesting and fun. But yeah, that was a bit of an essay to get through. Okay, forget that. We've got a lot of cool stuff that we were doing last, like 8 months ago when we took a break that we could get back into. We've got the literature class on the 1001 Nights. We've got
We've got Nietzsche, and you're talking about anything else.
okay, sold.
But
Let's do it.
before we go to Nietzsche, I have a question since we are on a free for all mode.
Yeah.
So there is a Japanese philosophy that it is called Ikigai, and it is about your purpose in life. It is not that simple, but let's sum it up to that. Your purpose in life. So, what would you propose to me to read an essay or a book or an author in general that he is about the purpose in life, the meaning of life, to finding one's life's meaning, etc.? What would you suggest?
Sure. But at the beginning of your question, you said, well, what made you who talked about purpose recently? You
It is an Japanese philosophy,
Okay.
a
So
Japanese philosophical notion that it is called Ikigai, and I started to study it.
interesting. Okay. Obviously, you and I went through on Twitter Spaces last year the whole Nietzsche Zarathustra thing. Finding a justification for being able to redeem the past, all of that is related to meaning. Um, in the 4th book, Zarathustra says, "What am I about? My happiness? No, I'm about my work." Right. So there's like purpose involved there. We could open up. So I will answer your question by talking about some books, but obviously, purpose and meaning is an existential type of question. And so the whole 3rd year material where we talk about Kierkegaard, um, Peterson, Jung, all of these guys. The first book that always comes to mind, though, for me is, and this isn't a book that answers the question, like that helps you find the answer to the question, but what it does from a psychologist perspective is talk about how to orient a person in a way. Look, I see a lot of comments from NeuroJack on here, and if you go to the X spaces where we are on Sarah's page, you can come and actually join our video if you like. Um, so from a psychological perspective, how to position yourself in a way where you recognize that you should be wrestling with the question of meaning, and some tools on how to do that. It's of course Man's Search for Meaning by uh,
Frankly,
by
frankly,
Viktor Frankl. Yeah, Viktor Frankl. It's
yeah.
a fantastic book. It's one of those books that you can just sort of read every year or two, and it's just always awesome. So for those who are watching, who are joining in here, I can see on the thing. This is a free for all. We're just going to talk about whatever we feel like talking about, and we gave Elena the microphone to decide what to do, and she's all interested in talking about existential crises and meaning and Zarathustra and Nietzsche. So we're gonna talk about meaning, and we're gonna skip our class on William of Ockham today because my slides are not done, quite frankly, and there's just too much to put together. So we're not ready. We'll do it next week instead. But that's what we're up to. So the thing about mythopoetic mythology, like the entire like if I think about the founders of religions, and I think about like Ovid's Metamorphoses and the Egyptian myths and the Mesopotamian myths, the Old Testament, like the Torah, is like these are stories, they're narratives, they're talking about characters, and they're speaking to you like you're a character, and they're presenting, therefore, sort of like an opportunity for you to interact with or wrestle with the text. But it's a it's all about telling you what world you live in and how you should be oriented to make it to your end goal, in a sense, right? That's the basis of a story. Is there's a character, he's at point A, he has to get to point B, here are the things that come in the way, here's how he tries to navigate through and whatever. But essentially that has to do with meaning, don't you think? Like it's trying to define you in relationship with the divine and with nature and with the body politic and with other people.
And
um
definitely.
Oh, Zara Spake is the thing. You're asking this question? Okay, I'm sorry. We've got a very enthusiastic, perhaps spammer, but perhaps an individual who would like to find us here. So let's go ahead and just put a link in where they can join us online. They found us unusually through YouTube, it seems. So here, here's what I'll do. I will comment. Oh, this is the easiest way to do it. There you go. It should show up in the comments now. I think that might be a link you can press or type in, and we'll see you in here, buddy. Okay, so before we took our break, we were doing a bunch of literature classes, some Salman Rushdie and other books inspired by the Thousand and One Nights, and we're reading the Thousand and One Nights, and we're doing all sorts of different things, and Ovid's Metamorphoses and some other mythopoetic classes, and a lot of the same year one stuff and the philosophy stuff. And I guess today is a free for all because I have not been able to get the slides ready for Occam's Razor, which I know we're just starting the Ethics Foundation section. And so we're going to do Divine Command Theory. And we're going to start with Occam's Razor today, but that's not going to happen because I'm just not ready. So instead, Elena, who is one of the TAs of the Zarathustra class and one of the individuals who's been here from the start, and we're going to just sort of lead a discussion in the comments on YouTube and on my X account. You can find the link to join us on live stream if you like, or hopefully we'll be entertaining enough. We're just going to have an old-fashioned discussion between friends about interesting topics. And it seems like the direction we're going to go here is the questions of meaning, which, remember, Nietzsche's idea was that nihilism was coming and that the only that we needed a philosophical solution, that we needed a solution to the problem of nihilism, that it was on its way in the next 200 years. Everything that participated in even the smallest way with nihilism was going to be drowned, and that his entire philosophical project, you can't really understand what Nietzsche's talking about unless you understand the context of, in his mind, his philosophical project is about finding a way to swim through to the other side of that abyss.
You know, that's weird because I constantly find hope in Nietzsche for some strange reason. Maybe I do not understand him well, but I constantly see hope. Constantly.
Well, good for you. You may be a rare type of individual, but you should. He's not a pessimist. He said once, "I've been a nihilist through and through. I have to admit it, blah, blah, blah." But so everything's up for debate. But from my perspective, it's very optimistic. He's trying to find a solution to the problem of nihilism. He doesn't want nihilism to win. So he's on the side of solving the problem. Unfortunately, everywhere he looks in humanity.
Hey, Roger, welcome.
Hey, buddy.
So
hey, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Zara and Elena. Awesome. And we are in the company of Occam of Razor, right?
Yeah, well, we're not. Razor of Occam. Did I say it that way? Did I say Occam of Razor? I think of him that way. I have a funny perspective on the idea. Did I actually say that? William of Occam? I said Occam of Razor.
Well, I said it.
Oh, no. Okay. I'm not sure if I accidentally said it because I almost did earlier. So, look, I've got a weird idea about Occam's Razor, which is I think it's going to be lost in a vast array of other tools and a rapidly expanding tool shed. I don't think people are going to look, not to take anything away from Occam, but I don't think we're going to care about it because we're not going to be able to at some point. But anyway, that's a weird idea.
Again, the cartoonified idea that is popularized about a philosopher, and the philosopher is way more than just that. And maybe that is partly wrong and maybe pulled out of context and probably stupid as well.
Well, he's not wrong. I mean, I love Occam, but so the question, though, for the scientismists is they almost take it like a gospel principle that, well, the simplest explanation would be better than the more convoluted one. And that's fine, because obviously that's useful, unless you have a plethora of explanations. Like what? Okay, so imagine in 500 years we actually develop something like an intelligent AI. And it can basically say, okay, look, I'm interacting with the world. I'm doing my own experiments in physics and chemistry. I'm going to come up with a grand unified theory. And we say, this is your job. Come up with a grand unified theory, a mathematical model, some idea of describing why everything happens. And then if I use your formulas or whatever the form is of this theory of yours, if I use those ideas, I can take some data, put it in, and it'll tell me what's going to happen in the physical world, whatever. And then we wait a week. And then we go back to see how it's doing. We say, hey, how you doing on that? Did you get an answer yet? And it goes, oh, yeah, definitely. Here's 2,695 answers. You could use any of them and take all the data that could ever be experienced, put it in, and get the right answer. But which one's right? What do you mean which one's right? They're either all right or none of them are right or nobody has an idea. So, okay, at that point, we have a tech issue. One moment. All right, well, we'll work on it. As we're talking, we'll work on it. So at that point, what you might say is, okay, do I use Occam's razor? Do I just find the simplest one? Boy, this one over here is really aesthetically appealing. This one over here seems to match the mythopoetic dream ideas of our founding. It like matches with like Greek mythology of the pantheon. That's surprising, but maybe there's a hint there that something is sewn deep into our subconscious and we were getting at something. Maybe that's the most humanly affirming idea. Maybe we should care about that instead of the simplest. Like, you know what I mean? Like you might say, well, if I don't have a best theory, well, then let's take the simplest of the ones I've got so far. But there might come a time where we will remember fondly and praise Occam for what he did, but that we might realize that from a philosophical perspective, okay, we fixed it. From a philosophical perspective, Occam's razor isn't helping us to cut away untruths. It's helping us to come up with ideas that are easily learned and easily remembered and easily worked with, right? But that doesn't mean that's what's going on behind the scenes of this whole physical world. It could be much more convoluted. So anyway, it's an interesting theory, and I only bring up any criticism of it to attack the scientismists, not Occam, really. Yeah. Can we hear you again, Elena?
Are you there?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay, hello again.
What were you going to say, Roger?
It reminds me of a parable about a guy who lost his keys, and he only searches for his keys where there is light. And another guy asks him, "What the hell are you doing?"
That's really good.
Yeah,
I wish I had a picture of that. We all know the story. It's funny.
Yeah.
Maybe let's let you tell the story fully, just in case anybody hasn't heard it.
Apparently, it's from the Persian tradition. And it involves Nasruddin Hoxha, which is basically the one-size-fits-all character for all these crazy parables, which many of them sound like a joke. And so the guy who lost his keys is looking for the keys, and he's looking for them where there is lights. And another guy appears. And, what are you doing, kind sir? I'm looking for my keys. Okay, so I'll help you look for them. And they start looking for them both, doubling their efforts. But then the guy suddenly remembers, the new guy suddenly remembers a pertinent question to ask. So where exactly did you drop your keys? Because the keys weren't appearing. Oh, I dropped them over there. And over there was pitch black darkness, no, no lights. And so why are you looking for them here? Because here there is light.
Here, the light is better. I'm looking where I can
Yeah.
see over here. Obviously, I'm looking where I can see. If I was in the dark, I'm never going to find my keys because I can't see. Yeah, but they're definitely not here. So what if the dim light of reason is over here? The actual explanation for what the hell is going on is way over there.
Yeah.
And we say like, well, yeah, but I'm working over here because this is where I can see. It's like, well, yeah, but the outcomes of our experiments are showing our concepts to be absurd and unusable. And it's like, what are we going to do? Well, we've got to stay in the light. It's a possibility.
And then another thing that's pertinent to Occam and his razor, what is where in literature people might find it. People who have read the works by people like Carl Sagan and friends, they are basically constituted a philosophical school, or at least a philosophical movement. Carl Sagan, Hitchens, Dawkins, also Sam Harris, etc.
Sure.
Yeah, these guys are the new atheists. Also very scientific, science and natural science, materialism. A lot of emphasis there, and I think there are a bunch of books by Carl Sagan where he expounds on Occam's razor and why it's awesome. And I think he even includes Occam's razor in his baloney detection kit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, they really love it, and it's a good idea. It's not a bad idea. So listen, Elena wanted us to stick with Nietzsche and talking about purpose, and you just brought up the new atheist movement. We just started for the first time recording of Decoding Zarathustra. And since we're not going to be able to do Occam's Razor today, why don't we read? I had said in the first class introducing this, where we did the prologue, I said Nietzsche predicted, prophesied is the right word for it, the existence of all sorts of intellectual and ideological movements and political movements, and then smashed them to pieces with a hammer, got to the bottom of them before they even existed. He did it with fake democracy, like in America in the 21st century. He did it with Nazism. He did it with communism. He did it with woke culture. He did it with freaking everything. And we talked a little bit about prophecy and how he was able to do that and what made it possible for him to be timeless in that way and sort of travel, to the end of the universe and back and all of this. It sounds like wild, but it's not. You can read the passages and where he's doing exactly what the prophets have always done. But we won't talk more about that right now, but one of the things that makes this book amazing is that, and one of the passages is that he does it with the new atheism movement. So we've mentioned like this question of Nietzsche as atheist is really, it's up in the air. There's a lot of debate here. I'm not endorsing the view of Nietzsche as attempting to be the second Christian. Remember, we said Christ was the only Christian who ever lived. Maybe Zarathustra is an attempt to sacrifice in your cross. Probably that argument, I think, is the most interesting of all the arguments of people who try to annex Nietzsche into their club. Your mic is on, by the way. There's everybody like Nietzsche as postmodern, Nietzsche as Marxist, Nietzsche as this, Nietzsche as that. Well, okay, he's a consummate thinker and he's a 1 in 10 billion genius. And so everybody would like to think of him in their club. And he's purposefully confusing and codifying what he's doing because he doesn't want everybody to understand it. Because if everybody can understand it, then how good of an idea is it in the first place, right? He's got some intellectual elitism here, which is quite interesting. But he's,
He's bashing the new atheists as well, as you mentioned.
He's bashing the new atheists as well. So why don't we read that passage? Oh, yeah. So this question of people trying to annex Nietzsche into their club, the one that I think is most interesting is Nietzsche as second Christian, which is really, I'm not endorsing it, but I'm saying it's the most interesting. Like Nietzsche as postmodern, there's all sorts of books. If you go to like a university, like any university, Emory, Syracuse University, whatever, you go to the library and you just look at the philosophy shelf, it's just book after book of Nietzsche as this, Nietzsche as that in the philosophy section. You can find whole shelves like that. But the one of Nietzsche as second Christian is the most interesting one. I think it's the one that might potentially carry some water. I'm not endorsing it. But in any event, we know that when we're studying the children of Nietzsche in the third year class, we're doing Jordan Peterson along with Jung and Plantinga and Bonjour, and we're looking at the sort of photographic negative of Kierkegaard. But in the Jordan Peterson class, we start out with a quote from the fourth section of Nietzsche's Zarathustra, the fourth part of the book, where Zarathustra's up on his mountain and the higher men are running up to avoid the floodwaters with the cry of distress. And he comes across the last servant, the last of service, the one who served God and was with him when he died. And he has a conversation with him where you can see, like you see these characters colliding, and what you see is what they have in common and what they have that are differences. And the sparks make that illumination for us to understand the way of being that might be the answer to nihilism, if Nietzsche was correct, or might fail. And we can be the judges of that. In any event, while they're doing that, he says to him, "Verily, long shall we have to await for one to reawaken thy God for thee." Zarathustra says, "I am godless. It's not my job to do that," but that's coming. So his vision of the future was not atheistic, at least. So in any event, the point is, it's complicated, the question of Nietzsche as atheist. And why don't we look up this passage on the Night Watchman? It's a rough one. It's a good one, man. He smashes everybody. Let's look at the Night Watchman. Where do we find that? I don't remember what section it's in. If anybody wants to look it up on Google, just the Night Watchman, what section is it in?
Will do.
I'm looking it up too. I don't think it's so early as to be in the beginning part of section 1. So I thought it was section 3, to be honest. It makes sense logically for it to be in part 2. But I thought it was in part 3. I know it's in part 3. It's after he does the passing by, the apostates. I know it's here, but it's not here. Is it translated to something else here?
So section 241, supposedly.
Okay, section 2.
Second part of the book.
So it's 32. It's 42. What? You said section 41?
Section 2, colon 41. So basically like this.
Yeah, my number's at 1 through whatever in each part, so I've got to add 22, but I should be able to find 41 here, and I don't see on the Night Watchman.
Is it called the Soothsayer by any chance?
Is it? It's possible. All right, let's give it a shot. All right, that would be 41.
Yeah.
All right, let's try the Soothsayer.
It mentions Night Watchman, yeah, this section.
Okay, all right, maybe I'm just misremembering that it was called the Night Watchman, or maybe it's my other translation. Okay, so hey, what fun. So just to remind everybody who's coming in, we're going to talk about foundations of ethics. We're going to talk about divine command theory. We're going to talk about Occam, William of Occam. We're not doing any of that because my slides aren't finished and there's too much to go over and I'm not prepared. So we're going to do is whatever we feel like doing with some of the old folks from everybody here's been from the beginning of the Twitter Spaces last year. So we're going to just sort of guide ourselves with whatever we feel like talking about. Now we're going to look at as a chapter, and it's again, it's narrative, it's characterological, it's let's smash. And then the next thing we're going to remember is Nietzsche, or his characters Zarathustra, has to become a yes-sayer to all things. He has to be able not to say all things are good, not to say that they're all desirable, not to say that they're all beautiful. They can be ugly, they can be evil. He uses all of these distinctions and makes these judgments. But to solve nihilism, he has to climb up the mountain above the clouds of good and evil. Now, he still comes back down and makes judgments. He says, oh, that's evil, that's good. So we're not endorsing mass murder as good, but we're saying the only way we can solve the problem of nihilism is to go beyond good and evil. It's up above those clouds. And from that perspective, Nietzsche sets himself the hardest test, which is I have to have a philosophy that can say yes to all things. Not that they're all good, but that I can't say it would be better if they had never been. Because if I say it, because he has a fatalism idea, like everything is tied to everything else idea, like a necessity idea is really the right word. So therefore, if I say one thing shouldn't have been, and we remember the essay by, yeah, right. We remember the essay by William James when he's talking about determinism and free will, right? and he's saying, if you believe in the necessity of all things and you say one thing is regrettable, what you're really saying is it'd be better if there was never anything. And that's nihilism. And that's what Nietzsche is attempting to triumph over. And so he's going to come into contact with things that are not him, not his way of being in the world, but he's going to affirm them as much as possible in the most profound way from the Zarathustrian lens, the most say yes to life. You are like all things an expression of the highest virtue, which is the attempt to make yourself felt in the world, which is the shining virtue, which we can talk more about later. That's misunderstood as will to power in a sort of Marxian context, which is incorrect. But we'll talk about that after this if we want. For now, what we're going to say is he's going to smash into them. He's going to notice that, and then he's going to find the grain of sand of nihilism that's within them, or sometimes it's a lot of nihilism of whatever he's smashing against, and he's going to condemn them for that. In other words, if you're going to maintain an attitude, which I know logically leads to, I wish there was nothing for whatever reason, however their nihilism manifests itself, of that type of way of thinking, he says, look, I'm standing on the 38th floor of a skyscraper and you're falling past the window, shooting towards destruction. While you're heading down there, I'm going to tell you not to be that way. But if you can't not be that way, because that's what you are, I'm going to push you faster along the way. Let's get this over with. Goodbye to you, because secretly that's what you want. It's rough. This is the philosophizing with a hammer. So we're going to see we're going to see the characterological language of Zarathustra. We're going to understand Nietzsche's perspective there to see, like, why is Zarathustra saying the things he's saying and doing the things he's doing. And we're going to see the prophetic element. Like I said, he's going to do this about the new atheism movement 150 years before it really existed. Okay, the soothsayer. And I saw great sadness come over mankind. The best grew weary of their works. A teaching appeared. A faith ran beside it. He's already calling them religious. All is empty. All is alike. All has been. And from all hills there re-echoed, all is empty. All is alike. All has been. To be sure, we have harvested, but why have all our fruits become rotten and brown? What fell last night from the evil moon? All our labor was in vain. Our wine has become poison. An evil eye has seared our fields and hearts. We have all become dry, and if fire should fall on us, then we should scatter like ashes. Yes, we have wearied fire itself. I don't believe this is the right passage, by the way, but we're going to just keep reading it, see what it's about. All our wells have dried up, even the sea has receded. The earth wants to break open, but the depths will not swallow us. Ah, where is there still a sea in which one could drown? Thus our cry rings across shallow swamps. Truly, we have grown too tired even to die. Now we stay awake and live on in sepulchres. Thus Zarathustra heard a soothsayer speaking. So this is the first character. It's not the night watchman. It's the soothsayer. And the soothsayer's prophesying in the streets like this, like they do. And Zarathustra hears the soothsayer speaking, and his prophecy touched his heart and transformed him. He went about sorrowfully and wearily, and he became like those of whom the soothsayer had spoken. Truly, he said to his disciples, the long twilight is not far off. Ah, how shall I preserve my light through it, that it may not smother in the sorrowfulness? It shall be a light to remoter worlds and also to remotest heights, or to remotest nights. Thus Zarathustra went about grieved in his heart, and for 3 days he took no meat or drink, had no rest, and forgot speech. At last it came to pass that he fell into a deep sleep, but his disciples sat around him in long watches of the night and waited anxiously to see if he would awake and speak again and recover from his misery. And this is the speech that Zarathustra spoke when he awoke. His voice, however, came to his disciples as if from afar. Hear the dream that I dream, my friends, and help me to read its meaning. It is still a riddle to me, this dream. The meaning is hidden in it and encaged and does not yet fly above it on free wings. I dreamed I had renounced all life. I had become a night and grave watchman on the lonely mountain castle of death. There I guarded his coffins. The musty vaults stood full of those trophies of his victory. Out of glass coffins vanquished, life gazed upon me. I breathed the odor of dusty eternities. My soul lay sultry and dusty, and who could have aired his soul there? The brightness of midnight was all around me. Loneliness crouched beside her, and as a third, the rasping stillness of death, the worst of my friends, I carried keys and the rustiest of all keys, and I understood how to open with them the most creaking of all doors. Like a bitterly angry croaking that I Like a bitterly angry croaking, the sound rang through the long corridors when the wings of this door opened. This bird cried fiendishly. It was unhappy at being awakened. But it was more frightful and more heart-stopping yet when it again became silent and still all around, and I sat alone in the malignant silence. Thus time passed with me and slipped by. If there still was time, how should I know? But at last that happened which awoke me. 3 strikes struck at the door like thunder. 3 times again the vaults resounded and howled. Then I went to the door. "Up!" I cried. "Who carries his ashes to the mountain? Alp, Alp, who carries his ashes to the mountain?" And I turned the key and pulled at the door and exerted myself, but it was not yet open a finger's breadth. Then a raging wind tore its wings from one another, whistling, shrilling, and piercing it through a black coffin to me. It threw a black coffin to me. And in the roaring and whistling and shrilling, the coffin burst open and spewed out 1,000 pearls of laughter. And from 1,000 grimaces of children, angels, owls, fools, and butterflies as big as children, it laughed and mocked and roared at me. At this, I was terribly frightened. It threw me to the ground, and I cried with horror as I never cried before. But my own crying awoke me, and I came to my senses. Thus Zarathustra related his dream, and then was silent. For as yet he did not know the interpretation of it. But the disciples whom he loved most arose quickly, seized Zarathustra's hand, and said, "Your life itself interprets this dream for us, O Zarathustra. You are not yourself the shrilly whistling wind which bursts open the doors of the fortress of death. Are you not? Are you not yourself the shrilly whistling wind which bursts open the doors of the fortress of death? Are you not yourself the coffin full of colorful sarcasms and the angelic grimaces of life? Truly, like 1,000 pearls of children's laughter, Zarathustra comes into all sepulchres, laughing at those night and grave watchmen, and whoever else rattles with gloomy keys. With your laughter, you will frighten them and throw them to the ground, and your power over them will make them faint and wake them. And when the long twilight comes and the mortal weariness, even then you will not perish in our heaven, you advocate of life. You have shown us new stars and new nocturnal glories. Truly, you have spread laughter itself out over us like a canopy of many colors. Now, children's laughter will always flow from coffins. Now, a strong wind will always comes victoriously to all mortal weariness. And this you are yourself the pledge and the prophet. Of this you are yourself the pledge and the prophet. Truly, just this is what you dreamed. Your enemies, that was your hardest dream. But as you awoke from them and came to yourself, so shall they awaken from themselves and come to you. Thus spoke the disciples, and all the others then thronged around Zarathustra and grasped him by the hands and tried to persuade him to leave his bed and his sadness and return to them. But Zarathustra sat upright on his bed with an absent look, like one returning from a long journey in a strange land. He looked at his disciples and examined their faces, but still he did not know them. But when they raised him and set him on his feet, behold, suddenly his eye changed. He understood everything that had happened, stroked his beard, and said with a strong voice, "Well, this too has had its time. But see to it, my disciples, that we have a good meal, and soon. Thus I mean to atone for my bad dreams. But the soothsayer shall eat and drink at my side, and truly I will yet show him a sea in which he can drown." Thus spoke Zarathustra, but then he gazed long into the face of the disciple who had interpreted the dream and shook his head. Okay, that is very interesting and helpful for interpreting even more the Night Watchman passage that we needed to read. However, it wasn't the passage we're looking for, and it's a bit too heavy for us to dive. I mean, we can dive into it if anybody wants to dive into it some, but I think we should wait until we get to that passage as we read through the story. That wasn't the one we intended to read, but I didn't want to stop once it started. He mentions Night Watchman, and it's helpful. Perhaps we should say as a tag here something like, the Night Watchman attempt to find a philosophical way forward without the arche, right? The sun isn't there at night, right? Okay, now in the prologue, Zarathustra comes out of his cave that he willingly went to and meditated, in which he meditated for 10 years, up on top of his mountain, and addresses the sun, "Oh, you most exuberant star, coming up to meet us, what would be your joy had you not us for whom you shine?" So he understands both sides of the relational aspect between truth being justice, goodness, and love, and how it can manifest itself in the creation. It's the source of all things, or at least the justification of all things at that point in the story, how it can manifest itself relationally with us. And he understands that from both sides. But we can think of Night Watchmen as those who their career, their job, has nothing to do with the sun ever existing. They sleep when the sun is up. So they have no arche in their system. But Nietzsche is affirming from the beginning, no, you need that. If God dies, we got no point. The nihilism wins. Like we have to survive. He did die. We need to find the solution here. But you can't just act like there wasn't something so great that it justified all the suffering, redeemed the past, gave meaning to the future. You don't just go forward and say, well, I enjoy doing my science. I could keep doing that. I like baseball. I've invented my own meaning. It's like it ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work for you. So let's at least put that tag on it. We need to pay attention to the soothsayer and all the rest of that. But maybe we can find the passage we meant to read, which is one that's easier to just jump into and extract out and have fun with, without the rest of the context of all that drama between him and his followers and his friends and his disciples and the transformations they go through. And we'll just sort of skip that for when we go through the classes on Friday. That was a spooky passage, though. I mean, did anybody else feel chills? Maybe I wasn't reading it terribly well, but this book is dangerous. I advise you not to watch any more videos on it.
It got some vibes of Pandora's Box there a bit.
Yeah, and the heat death of the universe. And
yeah,
he's not going to let himself come up with a cartoon excuse for being happy. He wants to actually solve nihilism philosophically and be like, this is how you can go forward and say yes to being despite all. but he ain't going to make it easy for himself. All right.
An instruction manual to the universe.
That's a good way to put it. You know, it's funny, an instruction manual to the universe. What's funny when you say that is that the things Nietzsche said about this book are even more radical than that. I mean, you can only be Nietzsche to get away with something like this, but I'm sure you all know this. This is the greatest gift ever given man. Imagine writing a book and saying it's the greatest gift man ever received from anyone. It's a book for all and none. Like he has all sorts of things he says about this book. In 200 years, whole departments of academic institutions will have to be set up to the interpretation of this book. We're basically setting up an academic institution around this in some ways.
Well, he clearly is
attempting to do.
referencing a lot of Easter eggs there, and these Easter eggs are from literature that sometimes is not for the faint of heart, or for people with very short attention spans. Like big volumes of classical literature, like Homer,
certainly,
Heraclitus, the Ionian Greeks in general. I think he also draws quite a bit from the goings and comings of the Peloponnesian War, where different social experiments appeared, like democracy, and others like tyrannical regimes of all flavors, with just one tyrant, with an oligarchy, with 30 tyrants, with everything. You know, these guys tried everything. They had these little islands and whatnot to try everything in each of them. Yeah, probably they got away with a lot of really wacky social experiments, and some of those were committed to text. Probably we probably have, you know, a really narrow idea of what happened when things were really at their peak, at their civilization peak. And Nietzsche, I think, draws a lot from classical Greece. But certainly. Not only. Yeah.
Certainly. One of the things that makes the text dangerous is that it is prophetic.
Yeah.
There's a lot that the prophetic does. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and what better way to be prophetic than to know not just the past very well, but to know the patterns of history.
Certainly.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry for cutting.
That's a part of how you get it from an intellectual perspective. That's partly how you get to that place. But then what the prophetic does, it does a number of things. But one of the very dangerously scary things it does is it accurately describes you. And now there's no way to slowly go down your path after that. So if you imagine someone is secretly harboring some sort of nihilistic, demonic motivation, some crooked wickedness or something, but on the outside they look real good, they're well respected, they sort of keep their public persona going well, and it's like, well, I'm not here to destroy everything. I'm the leader. I'm the vice president of the university, and I'm here doing the right things, and I'm the one who's trusted. It's like, okay, but when the prophet shows up and says, this is who you are, this is what's motivating you, to you, like you say to David, you're the guy that steals your neighbor's one sheep when you've got plenty. You're the dude, Saul, who's not doing the thing you know you were supposed to do. You did it wrong. You gave the middle finger to the divine. You thought you were clever enough because you're so important. As soon as that's said, you are at a crossroads. You either fall to your knees and say, I can't believe I did this. This is horrible. Oh my God, is there some salvation? And you repent like David did. Or the subconscious demons aimed at the destruction of everything have been called out by name, and there's no pretending. They're just going to more rapidly bring you to the destruction that they were aimed at in the first place. So to have a prophetic book like this read your mail to you, you better be ready to make a decision of which direction you're going to go if it's possible, because you're going to just destroy yourself faster. Or let the things that are destroying you work faster once they've been called out by name.
Yeah, especially if people have unintegrated narcissistic traits. I find that people that have these traits, when they are called out, when they are criticized, etc.,
They want
instead
to
of
double down. Yeah.
humbling down, like you said, they become way more defensive, and they become aggressive and sometimes even violent, because they feel that this critique on the accessories of their mind, they identify with those. They think that those things that you might call patterns of thought, demons or whatnot, stuff that's kind of
Mhm.
hijacking their lives almost entirely, but they are also addicted to those things. And so if you go to a guy who is addicted to heroin, and you start talking trash about heroin, in a way that he starts to kind of feel, okay, if I fall for it, if I fall for this guy trash talking heroin, I will lose my biggest source of joy and pleasure that I know in the entire world, and I will feel like crap. I will die 1,000 deaths or something like that. And I think narcissists, in the way they are addicted to these demons or patterns of thought, or character traits or whatnot. Yeah, it's very, very complicated. I would say that if you figure out that you're starting to criticize a narcissist, if you already know that a person has narcissistic traits, um, maybe it's better to give them a third sandwich, because they need to be patted on the ego and whatnot. um, and if they still don't get it, no reason to bother uh, getting them all fired up.
They cause a lot of problems. I mean, just I don't know. I've bounced around between different strategies for that type of idea, and I've seen people, and I've actually employed certain strategies successfully and unsuccessfully, and tested things out. Um, a deep psychological truth is that they desperately want attention, and they're suffering because they have a hollow, empty, shallow, nothing darkness of souls, and they know it, and that sucks. It's hard to go to sleep at night when that's how you are. But if you shine the spotlight on them, which is what they're actually looking for, because they kind of want an emergency ambulance to show up and help them, and first you got to see how they are. They don't know that's what they want. If you shine a light on it and thoroughly embarrass them, at least they leave you alone. It's kind of the whole punching the bully. They stop messing with you. But the other thing I tell people is like, look, if you're just above it and you leave, within 2 years, everybody they fooled sees through them.
Yeah.
It's just, if they don't have you to then fixate on, because clearly they fixate on the thing that is, they don't want to look bad by comparison, and so they assume that you're doing things that are admirable if you happen to be, just for the point of drawing attention to you, and just for the point of making them look bad by, it's like it's all about them. It's like, I can't like art history and study it and other people be interested. No, you're doing that to prove that you, and I can see through you, and I know your motivation. It's all projection and ridiculous, but it makes them hate the most good things, and they spend so many years. But if you just, I don't know, mocking them, insulting them, reading their mail to them in front of other people, because 87% of the population is nothing like that, but they're afraid, like, oh, I don't want that person saying bad things about me. I'll go be their friend. I'll feel, it's like you're ruining everything. You're spreading dissension amongst potential brothers, which is despicable and abhorrent. And you're just making everything worse for yourself and everybody else. So you can call them out on that, and people see through it eventually. But
Yeah.
okay, I found the passage. Now, he doesn't dedicate an entire chapter to the new atheism movement, but let's see if I'm wrong in my interpretation that this is about the new atheism movement. It's just the end of one of the passages where he's talking about different types of apostates, people who might have understood, right? An apostate's like you're in the club almost, but then you fall out. And some of them have even become night watchmen. This is Zarathustra talking. Now they know how to blow horns and go about at night and awaken old things that have long fallen asleep. 5 sayings about old things I heard last night at the garden wall. They came from such old, sorrowful, desiccated Night Watchman. Quote, for a father, he does not care for his children. Human fathers do better. He's too old. He no longer cares for his children at all, answered the other night watchman. Has he any children? No one can prove it unless he himself proves it. I have long wished he would for once prove it thoroughly. Prove, as if he had ever proved anything. Proving is difficult to him. He lays great stress on one's believing him. Yes, yes, belief makes him blessed. Belief in him. Old people are like that. It's the same with us too. So that's Zarathustra depicting a conversation he overheard last night between two old night watchmen who are blowing horns and waking up old things. Let's see what Zarathustra does with these two. Thus the two old night watchmen and late scarecrows spoke together and then tooted sorrowfully on their horns. So it happened last night at the garden wall. I'm just telling you guys, that's what happened. But my heart writhed with laughter, as if it would break and knew not where, and sank into my midriff. Truly, it will be the death of me yet to choke with laughter when I see drunken asses and hear night watchmen thus doubt God. Has the time not long since passed for all such doubts? Who may still awaken such old slumbering, light-shunning things? With the old gods, it has long since come to an end, and truly, they all had a fine, gay, godlike ending. They did not die in twilight, as some lie. Instead, one day, they laughed themselves to death. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. I'm going to hit pause really briefly and just mention, pay attention to polytheism as a theme, okay? One of his criticisms of the New Atheist movement is how monotheistic they are. And notice that the last thing that one of the night watchmen says is, it's the same with us too. We also wish to be believed. Like we're mocking God. It's all projection in a sense, maybe. All right.
Also, there actually was a famous story of an ancient Greek guy who
Yes.
died of laughter. He was a Stoic scholar.
He was laughing at one of his own jokes.
Yeah,
I think he was a comedian, or was he a philosopher?
No, he was a scholar of the Stoic school, Chrysippus. He was the third, I think, scholar.
I was thinking of him, and Zarathustra says, that's how I want to go. I want to die laughing. And you know, the old gods of the polytheism, they died laughing. They didn't die in twilight as some have lied.
It's kind of strange, because in the Norse Edda, poetic and prose and the skalds and whatnot, you get the story of the Ragnarok of the Aesir. So someone committed to writing the story of the end.
Someone committed to. Oh, you froze. We've lost you, buddy. I'm gonna rejoin.
Sorry.
Hello. Now, hold on.
I think I'm back. Maybe. Okay. So I was saying that in the Norse pantheon, we have a story of the Ragnarok, of the Twilight of the Gods, in writing, and it explains what happens and what results from this ending of the gods. For the Olympians, as far as I know, and I already got into contact with some of the mythology, it seems that there is no equivalent. So it might, if you want to select the best way of the gods to go, it might be laughing.
I'm looking at all your comments you put here. This one I want to highlight for sure. I was highlighting them just so they could all go out, but I want to highlight this one and say, that's the way to wrestle with this. That's the type of thing we should be thinking. That's a question we'll have to bring up when we get through this and keep that in our minds.
This is.
I was thinking the same thing potentially.
You clearly see that this guy, Nietzsche, he is referencing ancient philosophy many times.
Oh, so he's timeless. He's going back and forth. We'll talk about the time machine later. Okay, so let's finish. So he's just saying, I'm listening last night, and I heard these guys talking, and I thought I'd laugh myself to death. You know, the old gods, they died that way too. They didn't die in twilight as some lie. Instead, they laughed themselves to death. That happened when the ungodliest word came from a god himself. That's a good joke. right? If you imagine a god saying the most ungodly thing possible, you might laugh yourself to death. The word, there is one God. You shall have no other gods before me.
Yeah. So here, I think,
An old,
well, it's quite clear that he's probably referencing the Abrahamic tradition when the Mosaic law came about.
so this monotheism killed the polytheism by being a joke, by not understanding the nature of divinity properly, as if there could be a oneness to it when it's a okay. Let's pause. I don't want to interrupt the joke. So he's giving us a new now. Nietzsche is not bound when speaking historically to being historically accurate. He's saying he could be accurate, but he's saying that's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to give you a story that helps illuminate what's happening with these ideas. So why did all the old gods laugh themselves to death? What happened? That happened when the ungodliest word came from a god himself. One of the gods said, "There is one God, you shall have no other gods before me." An old grimbeard of a god, a jealous one, thus forgot himself. And all the gods laughed then and rocked on their chairs and cried, "Is it not precisely this godlike that there are gods, but no God?" Who has ears, let him hear. Thus Zarathustra discoursed in the town which he loved and which is called the Motley Cow. For from here he had only 2 days to go to reach his cave again and his animals, but his soul rejoiced continually at the nearness of his return home. It's amazing that he can make such a profound philosophical point while also just saying, like, sort of briefly, quickly dealing with this new atheism type movement. But there's one of the criticisms, if we just focus on the beginning part there first, of the new atheism movement is it's too monotheistic for him. Right? If we're going to smash things with a hammer and we're Nietzsche, right? It makes you smile. And the problem, like I've read everything Christopher Hitchens has ever written, by the way. I actually found microfiche and interlibrary loans. Like I've studied, I'm not trying to pick on individuals, right? I'm not really fantastic individuals in that group. But we're studying Nietzsche here and we're just trying to understand his his view is, yeah, the problem with Richard Dawkins is he just believes in one God too much.
Yeah, he's obsessing too much with
he's
Yahweh.
obsessed.
He's
And it's not
constantly talking about how he doesn't agree with the existence of Yahweh, but he's always talking about Yahweh.
okay. So that's one, right. So there's a few layers here to this. That's one potential criticism. I think it goes deeper than that, though. So it's not just, oh, you're always talking about God. You know, the old joke, there's only two people in the village who really believe in God, the rabbi and the village atheist. There's some truth to that. And there's some reason to really admire and appreciate the new atheists, especially since I think they care more about piety. They care more about the principles that they're doing, especially Hitchens, than 99.9% of people in the church, maybe than 90% of people who are clerics. Like these guys, all right, but but there's an existential criticism here, which is something like your entire science is a sub-denomination of Christianity. It was invented by the Christian notion of creation ex nihilo, where you could imagine having a perspective outside the universe and all that is here, and you're measuring it and looking at the clockwork. All of that is a Christian idea. If you want to be in the universe, or if you want to affirm being as all that is, you can't have, there's something nihilistic about that, which is why Nietzsche said nihilism abides in the heart of Christian morals. The Christian attitude towards truth invented this objective truth, which then killed our ability to believe in anything, really, ultimately, which is why the nihilism will come. But first, God died. I swear this is what he's saying. So, with the new atheist,
though I don't agree very much with giving too much praise or credit to the Abrahamic tradition for the invention of science, because in ancient India, way before any contact with the Abrahamics, a sage called Kapila already formulated a theory of atomism, and
Did he have a theory of empiricism?
Yeah, and empiricism. They were the
Unsurprising.
yeah.
Unsurprising.
They come hand in hand.
I want to be clear. Nietzsche is not saying that Abrahamic religion invented science. He's saying the post-Cartesian conceptions of how to interpret that religion invented modern science. And it's modern science with its obsession with an objective truth as higher and more ultimately true than other kinds of truths that is ultimately going to be the end of everything.
So a kind of ontological hermeneuticism of scripture gave the groundwork to conceptualize this creation ex nihilo, reinterpreted materialistically, something like that.
Yeah. We're obsessed with it in the West. It's going to kill us all. I think you said that right. I think I'm in agreement. It's like post Descartes. I'm not picking on Descartes, that's for sure. But post Descartes, our civilization has glorified an idea of a type of truth, which is a powerful type of truth, but it's a very limited and not very profound type of truth as sort of the only type, as the only truth. And nothing that is personal or characterological can live. I mean, you look at Sam Harris. I love the guy, but look at his ideas, is what I mean. There's no such thing as consciousness, and there's no such thing as free will, and there's no such thing as an internal life. Why? Because I can't find any units of it in my microscope. Okay, but you wouldn't by definition, because to do science, you have to banish all consideration of what it's like to be and all subjective things, and only talk about things that as a group you could all point to and measure and replicate in your labs, which is fine and very powerful. But to call that the ultimate truth and the only kind of truth necessarily kills all soul. It kills it. It is true that it's like something to be in the world. It is true that that perspective is available to us.
Sam Harris is the guy looking for the keys where they didn't fall, where there is light, because he really loves light.
We're not picking on him. It's good to love light, but yeah, absolutely. This is the thing that Nietzsche 150 years earlier said, you guys are going to figure it out eventually. You're going to play this out. You're going to have night watchmen like Sam Harris. You know, he's not saying he's stupid. He's saying this is this is not going to solve the problem. This is the problem. You're basically a Christian who's killing God and thrilled to death with it while he's already dead. You're beating a dead horse, and it's your own God.
Reason is awesome, but it would be awesomer if you gave reason way better starting materials. If you completely only circumscribe to empirical assessments, to the findings of empiricism, you're drinking from a very narrow straw. If like what happened with Ramanujan and Kekulé, who gained insight about the world in different domains. Kekulé in chemistry dreamt that there was a snake biting its tail, and he figured out the structure of benzene. It's circular. He was busting his head using reason, trying to reason it out, but the dream just gave him the answer. Who knows where this dream came from, if from a divine entity or the quantum foam or the lattice of space-time, quantum space-time, whatever, but something came to him that really helped in his science. And Ramanujan, who received mathematical teachings of extreme sophistication without much formal mathematical training, and he innovated in the field. He pushed the envelope by deriving equations that he claims he received from the goddess Lakshmi while dreaming. And these things actually impacted the world of physics, of material. The
Certainly.
material world is being impacted by, supposedly, by things that are nowhere material. They are non-local. It means that they are ever all present without any fixed point in space, and maybe they are timeless as well. Maybe if people can get into the right disposition or state of mind, they can also get insight from an entity like Parmenides also claims he got from a goddess, an unnamed goddess, who informed him about a completely radical and different way to
Okay.
see being,
I was
that encompasses everything, all time and whatnot, into a single unit. So
yeah.
I think people need to be really cautious in constraining their epistemology just to empiricism and reason.
Okay, I have to interject because you've only said 3 amazingly profound things that we have to discuss, and I can't keep. All right, I was looking for a painting, and I was trying to find any painting that would show what I wanted to depict here, and I'm not finding it quickly enough. Maybe this one will work. All right. The question is, should reason be on the throne, or is it a cupbearer to the king? Is it an advisor? Is it a thing? It's not the ultimate principle. Okay. And the insufficiency of reason being on the throne, nihilism is the result. The kingdom will not survive if reason alone is on the throne, but that doesn't mean it can't be right next to the throne and be an advisor. I want to say that I agree with you, and I've talked about in other classes, so I profoundly agree with you. There is a mythopoetic foundation. There's a deep thing to drill in, an ocean to swim in. Nietzsche actually said this about science too. He said, he said, what? It's so funny the things he says. He said, science is a subdenomination of Christianity. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially that. He says there's one other thread that brought it here. Like our Western culture is Christianity and paganism, kind of in this ongoing dialectic conversation. I can't wait to do a deep dive study into Camille Paglia, which I've been intending to do for a while. But she's said as much, and fantastic academic. Anyway, so the other trend is how could your science, your Western modern science, so impressive. You're so impressed with this. What would have become of your science had you not started out with a desire for secret and forbidden knowledge? It's witchcraft. It was witchcraft gave birth to science. It's like, ooh, I can learn the secret ways of manipulating things by combining certain things and how it works. Is you dreamt. Back to your point, you dreamt profoundly about a way of living in the world that would unlock certain secrets for you. And then you started to pursue it and enact it and live out as if that was possible. And you did it maybe badly at first, and maybe you got better over time. But this science thing is not some sort of, I was born, I've heard modern thinkers on debates and stuff, and maybe not Sam Harris, but people who sort of think in that camp. We'll make a distinction between Richard Dawkins and the Dawkinites. But there certainly are some impressive philosophical thinkers who've made an argument about how, well, we all start out as scientists. We're just naturally born to think rationally, and it's the evil parents and culture that ingrain in us all these weird dreams. And it's like, no. Children dream about dragons in every culture at the age of 6. Even in cultures that don't have stories about dragons, children dream about dragons. This is in you. There's a foundation to the imagistic impression you have of what the heck you are as you're developing and forming through childhood, and what place you have in the world and how you should be oriented. That's all written in there in things which would be stories and songs and sculptures and architecture and painting. And they are those things when the good dreamers dream really well. Those are the artists and the inspired. That's at the base of all of it, including your science, which you think is so, ooh, yes, we're kicking and screaming against our will, these dumb apes that we are, towards some sort of objectivity. So you're not going to get there. It's a dead end. As Roger has pointed out, the pre-Socratics already figured that out. There were pre-Socratics who had this tendency and this instinct, and there were Indian thinkers who were inventing atomism, and okay, fine. But there were also people back then who said, yeah, that's not going to get you to the truths you're looking for. Socrates said that. He said, that's why I gave up on physics and chemistry and geology. I gave up on all this. I gave up on mathematics. Socrates said, ethics. Ethics is the only question. How shall we live? How shall we be oriented? And then he said, and what we need to do is relate properly to truth, beauty, justice, goodness, and love. We need to recognize them as personalities. The proper vocabulary for that is narrative and art. You depict a personality in a painting and in a sculpture and in a story. And truth and justice and beauty and goodness are that type of thing. They are a personality. They're not a thing you're going to find units of in your telescope or in your microscope. And so I already know that's a dead end. So like Roger pointed out, it's not like this science idea is new post Descartes, but the takeover of scientism is the trend. Oh, hey, Neurojack finally made it in. The takeover of scientism is in fact what's happening in our culture, and it is a way of from Nietzsche for conceptualizing what it is that's murdering God. Of course, when a God dies, he dies many deaths, but it's one of the ways of, and so he's looking at the new atheist movement. He's basically saying, you're stabbing the corpse of God as if you're doing something significant. You shouldn't want to live without an RK as a night watchman in the first place. We need to solve this problem. We need to get something which justifies suffering, redeems the past, gives meaning to the future. That thing is the sun. Now I'm conceptualizing it as rising to meet me. I'm conceptualizing it maybe a little bit different or inverted from the way Plato did, perhaps, but there's still a cave and there's still a sun, and the sun is still representing what it represents. And you night watchmen, I might laugh myself to death hearing you talk. So let's leave the new atheist movement alone for now. But the last thing I would say is, Roger, you're correct. We need to be careful about imagining, which is absolute absurdity, imagining that we don't have all of these deep Jungian archetypes in our subconscious that are who we are and determining our orientation in the world, and just thinking, no, I'm just a scientist. I just think rationally. That's what I do. You never do that. Even in the lab, you have to have an entire group of other scientists just to force you into sort of doing it some of the time. But you certainly don't do it at all outside that lab when you're angry at the traffic while trying to get home and thinking about the meal you're going to do with your spouse later that night. That's not how you think ever. Mostly not even in the lab. So that is correct. But also I would say this, and this is important. This might be the only important thing I've ever said. Don't think that you can just go listen to any demon who calls herself a goddess and think you have the truth. If you're going to go swimming in this ocean, and be like, okay, revelation and mythology, and don't think that it's all true and you understand it correctly. It's all chaotic and insane. It's almost all certainly going to lead you the wrong, like you need some structure. You need to figure out how to weigh the spirits and judge the prophecies. And that's not an easy task, but that's the task you have to do if you're going to try to survive that. So we'll just put that out there and say, just because we're not making the dumb mistake, it might be better to make a dumb mistake of just being a scientismist and thinking, oh, we know all the things, the guys with the lab coat, I'll trust the experts. All of that's laughably ridiculous. And Nietzsche knew it 150 years before there were large movements of people basically defining huge political swaths of what we are in our culture and civilization today. Laughable. You might laugh yourself to death looking at it, according to Nietzsche. But that doesn't mean that you understand the mythology, that you understand what mythology to read, that there aren't demonic influences that are quite intellectual and very easily fooling you into thinking also, like, that's the start of the conversation, not the end of it, to say, well, we have to figure this mythopoetic realm out. Hey, Neurojack, nice to meet you, buddy.
Yeah, you too. I'm with my son, so if there's a little background noise, that's what it is. So I apologize. And but yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know much about your channel or anything like that, but we talk about, me and the people I hang out with, we talk about very similar concepts. I'm not exactly sure what angle you're coming at it from, but if you're talking about Plantinga and Nietzsche, it's close enough for me. So that's a good start. And yeah, I think what you're alluding to is correct. Like, you know, I'm not like a militant Christian, but like, at least in the sense where like I need everybody to believe like me. But certainly, like, I think that most people I'm going to have anything in common with, they have to have the basic understanding that, you know, trickery is kind of like part of the world, right? And you know, that's kind of
That's
what
right.
we're trying to fight against, essentially, right?
Hey, fantastic. So we'll introduce ourselves to you. Probably you and I should do some sort of podcast thing. We'll interview each other and ask about what we're all doing or something like that. But in any event, we are open to anybody coming in because our central principle is wrestle with God, wrestle with the text. You don't have to belong to any specific club. And if you think it's important that you do belong to a specific club, you, what your ability to wrestle with God correctly matters. But what you say you believe doesn't matter as much as how you act, right? So like the monkey believes he can make it when he jumps out of the tree reaching for the other branch. That's what the monkey believes. But if the monkey sits in the tree saying, I believe I could make it, I'm sure I could, but he talks about it for 8 hours and doesn't jump, the monkey clearly doesn't believe he can make it. You know what I mean? Like, so for us, belief, we're not looking for people to say, I believe this, I believe that, because saying you believe a proposition, as Christ said, doesn't matter. The demons believe God exists and tremble at his name. So we're not interested in people being in a specific club, but we are interested in people who display intellectual virtue and integrity, who are honestly trying to get to the truth, doing it honestly with each other in conversation. So I think we'll welcome you and your friends as often as
Yeah,
you want to come here, and we'll
it,
probably all get along real well.
yeah, absolutely. And judging by your presence on YouTube, I'll just go ahead and give you a fair warning. Like, you know, I don't know what your, you know, political or historical background with what's going on in the world, but you know, you're going to find that there's tons of groups of people that are happy to harass and dox and do all these things on YouTube, and I've
It
kind of
hasn't
weathered that
happened
storm.
yet. We've
Yeah,
avoided that because we're not
yeah,
popular.
yeah, but I give you a fair warning that like if you keep an open space, that will come into your space, and you're
Certainly.
going to have to weed that out. And I learned the hard way where, you know, I got into this for following some other creators, you know, and never really produced anything. And then I was like, okay, let me try this out. And I found very quickly that, you know, there's a lot of gatekeeping, as people call it, and it's pretty
Certainly.
well funded and all that. So I just give you that heads up that you will experience that at some point. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We've extended an invitation and an open hand to you, but we still look at you suspiciously. We've seen a lot of that in our Twitter spaces. There's all sorts of people who, well, I'm the authority and you should follow me. It's like, who gives a shit who you follow? Can we talk about the text? Can we wrestle with it together, honestly? And we got very good
And
at insulting and pissing off people who just aren't about the real thing and letting them hate us and talk bad about us. And we don't care. We're here to read Ovid's Metamorphoses. We're here to do classes like we're going to do later today on Jordan Peterson's Bible lectures. That's what we're here to do. And we're here to read Nietzsche, and we're just going to do it. And you can hate us all you want. So our attitude is, if people like that liked us, we would look in the mirror and wonder where we went wrong. We don't want to be popular. We want to do it right, and we want to keep it as small as possible so they can gatekeep all they want. We're going to do it properly while we still have time before we die.
yeah, I'm on the same page with you. My circle is pretty small. I have about like, you know, maybe 6 or 7 people that I really you know, will actually do podcasts with. Like I've come to enjoy banning people because like if people are not actually intellectually curious enough to have a conversation, then like I don't mind trolling in a friendly way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Passive aggressive, you know what I'm saying, right?
We did all. This is reminding me. We did all these classes on X Spaces, on Twitter Spaces last year, and I always had that rule. I was like, okay, you're making a joke and you're making it all about you, and you're hijacking the conversation. That's strike one. We will demonstrate that we can handle a joke and we're not upset about it. We don't want you to agree with us, and that's all fine. So we'll treat you like Socrates would, as if you really meant what you said. But then you don't engage in the conversation further, but you go back to your same trolling again. That's strike two. But you never get to strike three. You find out you're banned, and then you go tell everybody how evil and horrible we are, and don't listen to those people. And we're like, fine, don't listen to us. Go pay for subscribers and do your own fucking thing. We're gonna actually look at great works of art and cave paintings and that's what we're gonna do. So suck a toe. Like, have
Yeah,
fun.
well, I'm definitely in the right place then, because I have the same ethos for myself, and I'm trying
Cool.
to, honestly, some of my friends, they don't have the same ethos, and I'm trying to tell them, like, you're going to continuously suffer if you don't be a little more strict, and slowly but surely they're coming to the same realization, I think. So
Mhm. Uh-huh. So let us look at one of the most important. So today we were supposed to talk about Occam's razor. Oh no, sorry. We were supposed to talk about William of Occam as the Foundations of Ethics class, which we had just started an ethics series, and one of the 4 sections was Foundations. We're going to look at divine command theory. We're going to look at Occam, and I just frankly was not prepared. And so we decided just to hang out and do whatever we feel like doing. And Elena said, Nietzsche, go to Zarathustra again. And so freaking A, let's talk about meaning, and let's look at this awesome stuff here. I want to look at the passage on passing by. Anybody want to vote yes to that? I know that Roger and Elena have already TA'd this class for others, and like, maybe we'll end this really quickly with the on passing by passage, because it's directly related to Neurojack's idea of like, okay, how do we deal with this sort of thing and this type of person? And okay, on passing by, it turns out it's the passage right before the one we just read. Or the one we read an excerpt from, which we read an excerpt. Okay. So we're going to do this class on Fridays. We just finished the prologue. We're going to go through the whole thing. So this is just a day where we're cherry picking little stuff out. So you don't know that Nietzsche's Zarathustra has now actually spent 2 whole portions talking about things and smashing his character up against other characters and illuminating his philosophy by doing that, and the necessity of the mythopoetic and the narrative and the characterological, it depicting his way of triumphing over nihilism. And you don't know that in section 3 he actually says, I've not done any of the things that's necessary to do to be the sort of person who can redeem the past and give meaning to the future and say yes to being, but now I'm going to do it. And so he's actually done it in this section, or I think he's finished doing it, and now he's just talking about a couple other types. So that's the context. And let's see what happens with Zarathustra. Thus, slowly wandering through many peoples and diverse cities, Zarathustra returned by roundabout roads to his mountain and his cave. And behold, on his way he came unawares to the gate of the great city. But here a frothing fool with outstretched hands sprang at him and blocked his way. Now, didn't I say that Nietzsche is going to describe internet troll culture? He's going to describe things that you would think he wouldn't be able to know 150 years ago. Okay. With outstretched hands sprang at him a frothing fool and blocked his way. It was the same fool whom the people called Zarathustra's ape, for he had gathered something of phrasing and cadence, and perhaps, I forgot, this will be fun to read. Phrasing and cadence, and perhaps also liked to borrow from his store of wisdom. Right? There's characters that are not Zarathustrian, but they sort of recognize a little bit, and then they get hung up on other bits. And
this gives Twitter clone vibes.
Twitter clone vibes,
because because this fool is using material from Zarathustra, like okay. The Elon clones, for instance.
Oh, right. I got it. The clones, right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, fine. Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, this is Zarathustra's internet clone. This is the one with the profile picture that looks like Zarathustra. Okay, springs out. Zarathustra unawares comes to this city. The frothing fool springs out, reaching out his hands, borrows from his cadence and phrasing, and maybe from his wisdom. But the fool spoke thus to Zarathustra. Oh, Zarathustra, here is the great city. Here you have nothing to seek and everything to lose. Why would you wade through this mire? Have pity on your feet. Rather spit on the gate of the great city and turn back. So his advice is turn back. So the fool wants him to spit and turn back. Here, and now what we're going to do is, this often happens in Zarathustra, a person who's not Zarathustrian in his character will say many of the same things Zarathustra has said in other passages. Just like in Job, the friends of Job are saying things which are cross-referenced in the rest of Scripture, and yet at the end of the story, God says, you have not spoken rightly of me as my servant Job has. this is this is a scriptural text. It's amazing how Nietzsche was capable of accomplishing this. But okay, so here is the hell for hermits thoughts. The hell for hermits thoughts. Here, great thoughts are boiled alive and reduced. Here, all great sentiments decay. Only the smallest rattle-boned feelings rattle here. Don't you already smell the slaughterhouses and cookshops of the spirit? Does not this city steam with the fumes of slaughtered spirit? Don't you see the souls hanging like limp, dirty rags? And they also make newspapers out of those rags. Don't you hear how spirit has here become a play on words? It vomits out loathsome verbal swill, and they make newspapers out of this verbal swill too. They hound one another and don't know where. They inflame one another and don't know why. They rattle with their tins. They jingle with their gold. They are cold and seek warmth from distilled waters. They are inflamed and seek coolness from frozen spirits. They are all sick and diseased with public opinion. Sick and diseased with public opinion. All lusts and vices are at home here, but the virtuous are here too. There are as much serviceable serving virtue, much serviceable virtue with scribbling fingers and behinds hardened to sitting and waiting, blessed with little chest decorations and padded rumpless daughters. There's also much piety here and much devout lick-spittling and fawning before the God of hosts. Down from on high trickles the star in the gracious spittle. Every starless chest longs for what comes from above. The moon has her court, and the court has its moon caves. Its moon calves. To everything, however, there comes from the court the serviceable mob, and all serviceable beggar virtues pray. I serve, you serve, we serve. Thus all serviceable virtue prays to the prince that the deserved star may at last be pinned on the narrow chest. But the moon still revolves around all that is earthly. So all the prince revolves around what is earthliest of all. That, however, is the gold of the shopkeepers. The god of the hosts is not the god of gold bars. The prince proposes, but the shopkeeper disposes. But by all that is luminous and strong and good in you, O Zarathustra, spit on this great city of shopkeepers and turn back. Here all blood flows putrid and tepid and frothy through all veins. Spit on the great city. Spit on the great city that is the great trash heap where all the scum froths together. Spit on the city of compressed souls and narrow chests, of slit eyes and sticky fingers. On the city of the importunate, the shameless, the scribble and scream throats, the overheated, ambitious ones. Everything infirm, infamous, lustful, gloomy, insipid, ulcerous, and conspiratorial festers together. Spit back. But here Zarathustra interrupted the foaming fool and put his hand over his mouth. Stop at last, shouted Zarathustra. Your speech and your kind have long disgusted me. Why did you live? Now this is the wisdom. This matches what we're talking about, Nero, and your consideration with what to do here, as far as how to deal with this. Look how Zarathustra responds. Turns the focus and says, "Why did you live so long by the swamp that you yourself had to become a frog and a toad? Does not a trained frothy swamp blood now flow in your veins when you have thus learned to croak and revile? Why did you not go into the forest or till the earth? Is the sea not full of green islands? I despise your contempt, and since you warned me, why did you not warn yourself? This is where you're living. You're going online all day trying to say, look, that's not right, that's not right, that's not right. Vote and subscribe and follow me. That's bullshit over there. The whole thing is dumb. We should all get why? Why not just out of love alone shall my contempt and my warning bird take wing, but not out of the swamp. They call you my ape, you foaming fool, but I call you my grunting pig. By your grunting, you are spoiling even my praise of folly. What was it that first made you grunt? Now he's going to get to the bottom of him. He's going to dive right in and be like, let's see what's up with you. What was it that made you first made you grunt? Because no one sufficiently flattered you? Therefore, you sat yourself beside this filth so that you might have much cause for grunting. That you might have much cause for revenge, you vain fool, is all your foaming. I have divined you well. But your fool's words injure me, even when you are right. And even if Zarathustra's words were 100 times justified, you would always do wrong with my words. Notice there's a doing with the words. How are you taking this idea and just saying, I believe it's true? I do. No, what are you doing with those words? You would always do wrong with my words. Thus spoke Zarathustra, and he looked on the great city, sighed, and was long silent. All right, so at last he spoke. Let's pause there for a second. Say, okay, all we have so far is this encounter where he's saying a lot of the things Zarathustra has said, maybe a little bit, but he's doing wrong with his words. And then Zarathustra looks into his soul and says, why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense. So let's pause and look at what he's said so far. If you find something to be, let's say, pathetic, weak, sickly, stupid, dishonest, deceptive, bad in any way, and you pitch a tent and sit right next to it so that it surrounds you all the time, so that all day long you can point out at how bad it is. Whatever defines the creatures that live in that swamp also defines you just as much. What if you were on the side of a hill and you were in a cage and you broke out of that cage? And then you spent the rest of your life standing right next to your cage, not moving 1 foot away from it, looking at all the other people in their cages, dancing, look, I'm not in my cage. I'm not in my cage. You're as defined by the cage if you won't take even 1 step away from it, aren't you? Zarathustra is saying, you see this as pathetic and it defines you too. There's something wrong with the logic here. So we know that his solution isn't correct, but Zarathustra hasn't given us a solution yet. Your fool's words.
Just one thing. Again, please. Similar to what you mentioned about the new atheists a while ago, about Dawkins, yes. Always saying, "Oh, I don't believe in God." But he's constantly fixating on this God cage, so to speak.
We don't want to be unfair to Dawkins, but yes, the Dawkinites certainly are. And Richard Dawkins, to some degree, perhaps that criticism applies, maybe to some degree. But the Dawkinites, there's obviously an annoying movement of people who are very serious fans of Dawkins who do nothing but think about what they don't agree with. That's okay. Okay, so now, your fool's words injure me even when you are right. You do wrong with my words. Thus spoke Zarathustra, and he looked on the great city. So now he has to look at the thing that the fool was judging. He sighed and was long silent. At last he spoke thus. I am disgusted by this great city too, and not only this fool. Here as there, there's nothing to better, nothing to worsen. Woe to this great city, and I wish that I already saw the pillar of fire in which it will be consumed. For such pillars of fire must precede the great noon, but this has its time and its own fate. So it's not happening now, but he's prophesying it's coming. This precept, however, I give you in parting, you fool. So now he's going to tell the fool how he should have been living. Where one can no longer love, there should one pass by. Where you can find nothing to love, there should you pass by. You're not filling your life with love if you're just sitting and hating. Oh, I'm going to prove how hateful it is. Whatever it is defines you. That's your whole life. You should go find something to do. You should leave that hill with that broken cage and try to see if you can climb a mountain. You should maybe swim through an ocean. You should see if there's some happy green islands out there. Go look for something that you can love. If you're sitting in a place with something that you can't hate, you are as defined by those things as anything else in it, and you're just as loathsome as that thing. You're cursing yourself every day while you're cursing. It's like, again, I don't want to pick on specific people, but let's talk about the career of, this is such an obvious point, it's hardly worth mentioning. AOC and Ben Shapiro need each other. Right? Like, You know what I mean? If Cardi B writes a really raunchy song, Ben Shapiro's got lots of content. You know what I mean? It's like they don't hate each other. They're not fighting over something. They need each other. It's a deep, profound philosophical and psychological insight. I've noticed also that the people who, when we were growing up, we were very religious and I was homeschooled. It was a very isolated little kind of community in some ways. And I noticed that there were certain families in the church who really didn't want anyone to say darn it or peanut or anything that was replacing swear words. Like you stub your toe, you just, I guess, don't say anything because peanut, ooh, owie, like whatever you're saying, like darn it, that just means damn it, you're still swearing. Like, okay, you self-righteous idiots. Oh, fine. But then there were other people in the church who said fuck and damn it and shit and stuff like that. Like I'm edgy and it's about, I understand the real thing and this is like, and I realized they both need each other. If either side gave up their position, the other side would stop existing too. You know what I mean? Like, I need you to think fuck is bad to say so that I can prove that I'm edgy and beyond it. And you need me to at least say something. And if you can't, you're going to keep going to more extreme. Anyway, it just reminded me of that. It's similar. But where one can find nothing to love, there should one pass by. If you're a swamp creature, cursing the swamp and it gets into your veins and you become a little toad going like that's bad and I can point out all the bad and I can tear. So you're building nothing and you're loving nothing, you're manifesting no goodness. And even if you are right about all of the curses that you're putting on everything else, how foolish of you to wish to be psychologically motivated by a lack of flattery. You wish people would notice you better. I mean, he's divining the soul well, I think. Anyway, I thought that would be useful to look at. It's relevant, I think.
There's also 3 general ways in which people can engage in discussion. People who are actually genuinely interested in learning and approximating the truth, they will accept criticism so long as it's not abusive. They will also critique others, trying to
even if it's abusive,
trying to be sincere and whatnot. And for the most part, people like these together, they will approximate the truth. They will have the good conversation. But then there are people who have no.
For all the abuse you want, it doesn't matter. Yeah. We're here to do something.
There are people who think that their position, and they constructed their position, and that they think their position is better than all the others. And so what they're doing is they're trying to protect their position with all the skullduggery that they can, all the manipulation, while they also use all the manipulation to shoot down anyone else. So they can,
God bless them.
They can feel superior.
We have to laugh at them and we have to pass by.
But then
we can't sit there going, I'm not like that person. Yeah. I'm not like we got to just laugh and pass by. Like, that's sad. Yeah. It's sad, but we can still do something lovable and worth doing. We can still love these texts and wrestle with them every day and say, who cares? I hope you get 100 million subscribers and you get everything you ever wanted. Can I go read a book? Is that okay with you? Well, but it's not okay with them because it makes them feel like, oh, I've got to tell the world how that's not the right person to pay attention. It's like, fine, do that. Do it all you want. I'm not here to argue. Like, again, you can't make the same mistake of being like, I'm going to point out how all these other people just want subscribers. It's like, God bless them. They're putting on a good show and having a good time. Can I please go focus on something else? Is that okay? And it sort of is and isn't, but you should feel bad for the people that are like that. But you shouldn't look at them too long.
There's even worse. There's people that they don't even have any position. They don't even care to have a position. They build nothing. They create nothing, and they just want to shoot down anyone else. They just want to,
of course,
probably with ad hominems, trolling, etc. Yeah, these. So there are these two sides.
And Nietzsche's saying, I can tell you about their soul. I'll divine it well for you. Roger, Neurojack, if you're confused by why there's so many nasty people ruining what could easily be so good so simply, here's the answer. They're starving. They're hollow. They're empty. They're dark inside their own souls, and they're just sad and miserable and looking for a Band-Aid. I had an image once that flashed into my mind of what it would be like to sail sort of past through the river Styx into hell. and you hear all the screaming of the hollow. I mean, being a shadow means not being substantial. You can't make yourself felt in any way. You lack that capacity, and so you're sort of clawing at things and trying desperately to prove that there's nothing that's not a shadow. As soon as some substance shows up, no, that's not right, because you feel bad by comparison, whatever. But you're like, these creatures are like, well, where are they? I'm hearing them, and then you look down and you realize you're floating over them. And if you pay too much attention, or if you have empathy, if you try to pull somebody up, they're going to pull you. Like, all they're interested in is pushing things down, because they don't rise up that way, but they get a temporary illusion of elevation by doing it. So they're constantly being nasty. They don't have friends. They might have 100,000 subscribers, but they all hate each other. Like, you don't need friends like that. You're not missing out. You don't envy. Don't say, oh, if only I had 100,000 shadows that were full of nothing good to say, and we're always desperate to get the spotlight on them again, and like tear down anything good, as Roger says, as soon as it pops up. Don't envy them. Be like Socrates. Hang out with whoever wants to hang out, and then notice that if somebody comes across your path, like the foaming fool, Zarathustra's grunting ape, or grunting pig, or a troll, or anything else, you can handle it. Just, yeah, throw your abuse this way. It means nothing to me. What shadows don't hurt me. Shadows can't touch me. I have substance. I have something real. I promise. You don't have to believe it. But your shadow, just rage against the machine as much as you want, and then what? Just, I'm sorry. Well, what Socrates does is he acts as though the person. See, here's a real good insight. The people who are cursing anything that's good, as soon as it arises, as Roger's describing perfectly, they always make the mistake of saying, I can tell that that person just wants attention. I can tell what their real motivation is. And it's always just projection. They're just exactly that type of person, just saying, well, they look like they're building houses for the homeless, and they turned it into a TV show, which actually got even more money in and more sponsors, and they're building more houses. But that's not it. They just want attention, and they're just trying to like do it. And I know, and they're like, okay, fine. Maybe you do. But it's definitely true about you, because that's what you assumed. You couldn't even imagine somebody doing something good without a base motivation, because that's the only thing you can imagine someone being motivated by. But here's the challenge for us, Roger, Zara Spake, Neurojack. The challenge for us is this. What are we projecting? When Socrates comes across a person like that, he can tell, but he always talks to them as if they mean everything they're saying, as if they actually care about truth, and lets them embarrass themselves. Let them run away. Let them decide, I'm going to scheme until I can get him to drink hemlock. Fine. But sometimes the person responds with, whoa, Socrates, you're right. I don't know as much as I thought I did. Can you teach me a new way of thinking that I could have good conversations with you about beauty and justice and truth and goodness? That sounds good. And sometimes they say, I have something to share with you, or I'm a prophet or an inspired artist. And like, he makes good friends. The friends you make are well worth the 100,000 subscribers that you don't have. I promise you, losing those people is a blessing. It's a blessing. You don't need them in your life. And so if you realize that, they can't get you down. If they're tricking you into like, I've got 100 people who come along and say, we think you're full of garbage and we can read your mind. And okay, you're right. You're all right. I promise you, I'm the worst person who ever lived. Can the worst person who ever lived try to better his soul? Is that okay? Because that's all I'm trying to do here. I want to read these books and see if it's possible for someone as horrible as me. But you're right. I'm horrible. No one should follow me. No one should like me. No one should trust me. I don't want you to. What I want to do is talk with other people who want to talk about these things. Let's do that. I don't know what they're going to do except eventually cancel us or execute us, which is what they always do if we do it too well.
Well, I'll just say this: like the phrase that keeps coming to mind, and I'm sure it comes from like Gabor Mate or Stefan Molyneux or one of these guys. I can't remember exactly, but they used to use this term about the realm of hungry ghost, and I think that's what you're kind of saying. And I think that the challenge for us
that's one of the realms of samsara from Buddhist mythology. It's one of the six.
The realm of hungry ghost, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
And
that sounds exactly right.
Yeah, and I didn't know that's from Buddhism, but that makes a lot of sense. And basically the way I would describe it is like the challenge for us, and I agree with everything you said. I mean, Socrates is definitely my favorite philosopher as far as like what it translates to today, because I mean that's generally been my model of talking to people, is just take them seriously and try to break them down. And I've become a little bit more aggressive over time because I can kind of like I've noticed that people will try to, you know, circumnavigate what you're doing, and I just get tired
Oh,
of that
sure.
process over and over. But yeah, generally that's my approach. And you know, so I guess the thing is for us, it's like the challenge. Like you want to be bright enough that you attract other people on the same journey as you, I guess. But at the
The
same
right
time, you
people
want
find each other.
to, right? But you also, like you said, like you don't want to become so bright that you become a target of these people, right, or whatever they
Yeah,
are.
I
You know what I mean?
guess. Let them do what
So.
they want. I don't mind. Look, we
Well, at
just
least you need to make sure that you're made an example of at the very least, right? Like, you know, like if they're gonna do that, become a Socrates, where you know you're like, okay, I'll drink the hemlock because you know I'd rather not suffer among among this any longer, right? And you know what I mean? Like I think
I follow
that's
you.
really
Yeah,
what the story of Jesus was about as well, and that's kind of why, like, I mean, I've always thought that
that's right.
Jesus and Socrates have a similarity that you know
Agreed.
in some respect, right? And so
Oh, it's the same kind of story.
yeah.
Yeah. You know, the Catholic Church did a study that they came out with a conclusion that Socrates had saving grace. He was it's I think they're not wrong from their perspective. Like I think they were right to make that judgment.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's kind of the thing is like when once you start getting told that you're corrupting the youth, then you
Then
know
you're
that you've
doing
done something
something
right.
right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we won't worry about the outcome. We're going to speak the truth and let the skies fall. And
Especially considering the corrupting influence on the youth that was, veritably perceivable of the accusers.
yeah, I think on Thursdays we read Plato's Dialogues. So we're doing this 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. every Monday through Friday now. And we have actually a different class every single time. So we're doing 10 different classes right now. If we did ever get to like 300 subscribers on Patreon, we would be doing a lot more classes. We have 3 other professors coming to lead a bunch of new material. I just looked over one of the literature classes. It's an entire literature curriculum. It's so much material this individual's putting together. It's amazing. And so we got lots of good stuff coming. There's a website that we'll release at some point. Lots of great things for this little online university. But in about our next classes, we're going to continue the Jordan Peterson stuff. I should have sent the links to Mark and other people. I was out of it today, I guess. But we'll start at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the next one. And I'm going to end the stream unless anybody has. I gotta remember to do this. Does anybody else have anything profound to say before we end the recorded part and go into the after conversation?
No, just thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. We'll talk some more in a second.